Thank you for coming. I'm Katy Wallace. I'm a naturopathic doctor with Human Nature, and the topic of today's webinar is more energy. So I'm a naturopathic doctor practicing in Madison, Wisconsin, and offering this program in coordination with the Willie Street Co-op. I've been practicing for, I think, 17 years. I was just thinking to myself, I need to go back and check the date, but I've had this partnership with the co-op probably for about 15 years, where I give these free lectures and also offer one-on-one private sessions at the co-op. For a private session at the co-op, there's a handful of spots at the reduced $45 rate every month. So if you're interested in signing up for one of those, you can contact me directly. It's a nice way to get some individualized attention around what you're eating and natural ways to support your health. Next month, I'm going to be talking about tips for gut diversity. I'm really excited about that upcoming webinar. It's on Tuesday, January 23rd, again at noon. Before I begin, I want to say this talk is for health education purposes only and should not be taken in place of medical advice. So here's our outline for today. We're going to talk about basically how energy is produced in the body with a focus on what are called the mitochondria. And in relation to that, I'll talk about some key lifestyle habits that you can use to improve mitochondrial production of energy, which in turn will translate to having energy and mental focus and clarity when you want it. So we'll talk about sunshine. We'll talk about different light therapies. We'll talk about circadian rhythm, blood sugar balance, and the importance of a healthy diet in terms of especially reducing inflammation and controlling blood sugar. We'll talk about ways that exercise improve energy levels for people, and then some other important things, including managing stress, different natural health supplements that help boost people's energy, and then when you need to go a little bit further, making sure that your basic blood chemistry is dialed in and that you're supported nutritionally to have the best levels of energy. So to begin, energy is made in our cells in the form of ATP. So you might remember from biology class, ATP, it's the usable chemical form of energy inside our cells, and it's made in the mitochondria. So the food we eat, the fats, the carbs, the proteins, are basically broken down into nutritional components that help us make ATP, and that's what gives us energy. So there's three different ways to make energy. I'll just go over this very quickly. For some of you, this won't apply, but for those of you who are more athletic, you may find it to be very interesting and help you with improving your energy for athletic performance too. So the most instantaneous energy, like if you had to lift a weight or sprint for 10 to 15 seconds to catch a bus, would be produced by the creatine phosphate or phosphagen cycle of using ATP in the cells. And this uses something called creatine as the nutrient that is burned and drives the ATP production. And it's important to point out that creatine only comes from meat in the diet. You can't get it from any other food. So meat is the general source, although it can be taken as a supplement too. We also make creatine inside our body. So we can make and store a limited amount. And then if you need more of that, like explosive, very short-term energy for your goals, you're going to want to eat creatine sources. The next type of energy that's made is another short-term energy, but it lasts longer than that really strong 10 to 15 second burst. It's more like a burst of energy for something you're going to need to do over 3 minutes or so, up to 3 minutes. And this is the anaerobic use of carbohydrates. So when people talk about needing some sugar to like fuel up for their workout or something they're going to do, this is usually the type of energy production they're talking about. People that are on a no carb, if you're on a no carb or like a ketogenic diet, then you wouldn't really use this type of energy production. And instead, when you're doing these types of physical activities, you're going to either rely on the stored ATP or stored creatine cycle, or you're going to use more of the long-term aerobic production of energy for these intensive types of activities. So it is possible to be on a no-carb diet and still get plenty of energy. Some people succeed in that. But in general, this is what people are talking about when they're talking about needing carbs for intense energy. Then the last stage of energy I want to talk about in production of ATP is the aerobic production of ATP. So this is where most of us are using this form of energy production during the day. It's for any activity that's lasting longer than 3 minutes, maybe hours. It could be an endurance activity or just a sedentary activity. And so our body can use carbohydrates, it can use fats, and it can actually break proteins down to make energy in this cycle. And all three of these stages are made in the mitochondria inside the cells in our body. And that's what fuels our body. So to sort of take you back again to biology class, this orange thing on your screen that's pictured here is a mitochondria. And so when I'm talking about the ATP is produced in the mitochondria, this is a visual of what I mean. And so the mitochondria are very, very important for your health and well-being, and also your ability to have the energy to do the things you want to do. So if you're very tired, it may be because you need to work on your mitochondrial health. It may also be that you're very inflamed. And in that case, you need to work on your mitochondrial health also. Mitochondria are important not just for energy production. They also do some key things that I've listed here. They help with breaking down the cells that have kind of gone bad. Okay, so you can think of, the scientists actually refer to these cells as zombie cells, and they can grow into cancers. And it's the mitochondria's job to send a message that says, it's time, the cell is not healthy anymore. It's time for it to die. It's time to create new healthy cells. And if you don't have healthy mitochondria, then they don't send that message. And that is part of how tumors and other long-term disorders develop in the body. The mitochondria also direct the other compartments of the cell to work. So you can think of them as kind of like a project manager of the activities in the body, and they influence our overall physiology and our genetic expression. So if you're taking care of your mitochondria, you're much more likely to have healthy DNA reproduction. When you're making new cells, you're much less likely to develop diseases and different disorders. So mitochondrial health is really where it's at. Obviously, a number of other things are important too. But when it comes down to energy production, today I want to focus on basic things you can do. Most of them are free or almost free for everybody that really have a big net impact on mitochondrial health and on your energy level. The first is sunlight. Sunlight is made up of a full spectrum of energy rays, and scientists have shown over and over that sunlight's very important for how much energy the mitochondria in our cells produce. So just to break down that visual spectrum of light for you, you can see the range here, and the red light in the visible light spectrum, and also above it here in this diagram, which is labeled infrared, this part of the light spectrum is especially really good for mitochondrial health. This infrared energy, the near infrared that's close to visible light, is seen as red light. And the higher up we go, the more the infrared energy is felt more like heat. So for example, if you're walking on a beach in warm weather, you can feel how there's infrared energy in the sand because the sun has heated it up by contributing infrared energy. Or if you sit on a warm rock outside, that's an example of infrared energy that's being emanated from the rock. So scientists have found that many different parts of the light help support mitochondrial health. So I've tried to include some research studies in today's talk so that you don't just think that I'm just telling you what I think is good. There really is a lot of science behind these very basic things. For example, this study is talking about how using light helps to regenerate healthy skin and healthy eye cells in people with a lot of skin damage and eye damage. Here's another study where they looked at young college men and they looked at the effects of just exercise alone on healthy hormone levels and healthy sleep levels. And then they looked at exercise in combination with sunshine exposure on their sleep and the hormones. And what they found was that the more sunlight they were exposed to when they're coupled with exercise, especially, the better they slept and the healthier their hormone levels were. So they had less of the excitatory stress hormones that tend to cause more mood disorders, more problems sleeping, more problems with appetite. And when they were in the sun, they were just much more balanced. So some good studies out there showing us that it actually really does make a difference. And I want to bring this to attention. I think I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and most of you tuning in today are in Madison or in the southern Wisconsin region. And we really do experience kind of a lifestyle shift. Most of us do spend a lot of time outside during the warmer seasons. And then in the colder seasons, I get the impression from talking to a lot, definitely standard Americans, and still a lot of the people I talk to that are health conscious, that maybe a short walk or a few minutes a day out in the sun is enough. And it's really not. It's not if you're trying to optimize your health. Your mitochondria need the benefit of the sunlight. When we're indoors a lot, which most of us are in the winter, we get the wrong light for our bodies. We get artificial blue light. So all of the LED lights that are popular today, the majority of them tend to emphasize blue light. There's blue light predominating your computer screen unless you have a blue blocker on it or have the screen level adjusted. Blue light coming from your TV, blue light coming from your smartphone. And so it's very much common for people in modern day to be getting way too much blue light exposure and not enough sunlight. And this is very detrimental to the health of our cells and our bodies. So we know from scientific studies that the artificial blue light reduces the production of energy from the mitochondria. We know that it makes us more insulin resistant. So it's making us more prone to blood sugar problems, diabetes, inflammation, cancer, heart disease, all from the blue light. And other factors matter too, but I'm just trying to point out, I think there's not enough discussed about the impact of the light environment on those who are, concerned about optimizing their health. Blue light also really causes a lot of sleep disturbances. And so, of course, that affects our energy levels, our hormone levels, our blood sugar levels, and our mitochondria's ability to make energy. This is another example of a study where they showed how the blue light basically destroys the mitochondrial health. So you can do some very basic things to help block the blue light that you are exposed to. And so this helps with a number of things, including mitochondrial production of energy, but also production of melatonin, which helps keep the mitochondrial healthy. You can put a blue light blocker if you just go to the settings on your phone and on your computer. There's a blue light blocker on all the modern day electronics. You can wear glasses like I'm wearing here to protect yourself from artificial light, the predominant blue light. And you can change some of your light bulbs in your house to replace the ones that are blue with ones that are warmer tones. So there's a lot of things you can do in your indoor environment to make it a little better. But ultimately, the thing that's going to make the biggest difference if you're looking to improve your health, one big thing is to just go outside. And what I have posted here is a group, it's a Facebook group called 1000 Hours Outside Madison. There's kind of a national movement to help encourage people to go outside more for their health. So a number of years ago, I downloaded this log sheet and I logged every hour I was outside for the whole year with the goal of getting to 1000 hours outside. So that was about 3 hours a day on average. And it was really helpful to do this process. I'm just giving this to you as an example because it helped me see how there were actually a lot of things that I normally did inside that I could do outside instead. And so I was able to do that while I was trying to reach my goal, and then I was able to just keep maintaining the habit afterwards. And so again, this is not just me, Katy Wallace, saying this thing is important for you. Here's another example where, eye doctors are talking about how the research is showing that the blue light is very bad for mitochondrial, especially in the eyes, and red light, the other end of the spectrum, is very good. I'm going to give a program in March, a free webinar all about light. And so we're going to talk all about this topic and ways to work with the light in more detail. But I think it's very important in talking about energy production. So one of the things you can do, since I don't live, and most of you don't live in like a warm, sunny climate year round, is you can use a red light indoors in the winter. The red end of the spectrum is very antioxidant, very health promoting. And so you can't hurt yourself with a red light, basically. You can look at the red light. It's very safe to look at it. You want to sit within 12 to 8 inches or lie within 12 to 8 inches. I usually tell people start with 20 minutes a day, but you can work up to, if you want to be in front of the red light all day, there's nothing about that that's going to hurt you. It's only going to be good. And it's only going to boost your cellular energy production level. It's only going to balance your hormones more. So only going to help your sleep. It's only going to help repair injuries. So many different benefits. In some of the studies, they found that using red light helped athletes to increase their endurance if they used red light before their athletic activity. And so it can also help with energy and performance because you're energizing those mitochondria. Here's a picture of a setup I have at home, just to give you an example. Everybody's home is a little different, and the solution for getting light in the off season might be different. But I have this bulb, like I said, in the last slide, it's maybe $10 for the least expensive bulb. So you'll see the bulb at the top, and what I do every night before bed is I lie under the bulb and I read my book. And what I'm lying on here, you don't have to do this, but this is a far infrared mat. It's called a biomat. And I got one of these because it seemed too costly and we didn't quite have the space to figure out how to put a sauna inside our home. Certainly you could go out to a sauna in the gym. You could get a smaller biomat. This big one's fairly pricey. You can also get sauna blankets that are more economical. And so the far infrared, which is just heat, has a lot of benefits for the body as well. But essentially, the red light is what we know is really, really good and essential for the mitochondria. So as you add these other elements like heat, you only increase the benefit. So it's very important for your mitochondria to go outside every day. The best time of day for the mitochondria is sunrise and sunset, because that's when the red light is strongest. And you want to go for at least 30 minutes a day. You want to minimize your artificial blue light and try to go, if you need to have artificial light, try to go for more red light and near infrared light. So I want to switch gears away from sunlight and talk about cold water therapy or cold therapy. So this is a picture of some men in a workshop where they're learning about cold therapy and their health. Basically, scientists have found that when we're exposed to cold, we make more mitochondria. And if you have more mitochondria, you're making more energy. So I kind of tell myself this when I feel like it's very cold here. And say, well, people in other parts of the country are, going to all these extreme lengths to make themselves cold just for their health. And here we are, all we have to do is walk outside. So how lucky are we? So you can get this boost for your body by doing like an ice dip. Some people will go out in the Yahara River, for example, for a daily dip, or go in the lake. I'm sure you've seen, write-ups about these people on the news. I prefer instead to take a longer walk in the cold, and so I don't bundle up as much. I just wear enough so that while I'm walking, I'm a little bit chilly. And I believe that you're effective at inducing some of the boost to your metabolism in the cold if you're shivering just a little bit. You don't want to be like shivering a lot and losing control of the heat in your body. But if you're just a little bit cold, then that's about the right amount of discomfort to help stimulate this process we're talking about that's healthy for the body. So every morning I just go out, I take a walk, and make sure I don't wear too many layers so that I'm a little chilly while I'm out there. And then I warm up when I come back home. So it can be, it's free. It can be accessed by anybody. Conversely, heat therapy is also really good. So it can be good to do both of these things. But scientists have shown that heat therapy helps improve the mitochondrial activity and thus our energy too. Here's an example of a study where they were talking about how the mitochondria produce more energy when they're exposed to heat. The next thing I want to talk about is the circadian rhythm for energy production. So a circadian rhythm is basically the 24-hour cycle in a day. Every living thing has a circadian rhythm. So people have a circadian rhythm. Our subconscious body has a circadian rhythm, right? Different organs, different processes happen in a 24-hour cycle. In the picture here, the trees have a daily rhythm, the plants have a daily rhythm, the insects in the ground, the birds in the trees, everything has this cycle. And the cycle is very beneficial for helping us live and adapt and be more productive. So one of the most important aspects of that 24 cycle of our behaviors is our sleep-wake cycle. And scientists have found that without really good sleep, the mitochondria can't renew themselves and can't make energy that day. I mean, if you think about it, it's really obvious. If you haven't had a good night's sleep or a few good night sleeps in a row, most people, quickly start to break down and not have very good energy. So the sleep appears to not only affect the amount of ATP we can make in our mitochondria, but it also affects our hormone production and release, which affects our energy. And that in turn affects our eating habits and our digestion, right? If you haven't slept well, then typically what happens is the hormones for satiation are different and get off kilter. So people are a lot more likely to be more impulsive about how they're eating when they're not getting good sleep. Or if they're trying to lose weight, the studies have shown people are much more successful when they're getting a good night's sleep with weight loss because their hormones for satiation are more balanced. When we don't get as good sleep, we know that we have higher levels of stress hormone production like cortisol, and that will thin the gut lining and contribute to gut health problems and nutrient health problems, which of course affect all these other things I'm talking about. So it's good for most people, there's an average of needing 8 hours. Certainly some people are different than that. And I tell people to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time daily, even on the weekends. So if you're really struggling with energy production, I would challenge you to try this. Because if you're getting enough sleep and you're following a consistent clock, most people will respond really well with more energy, just changing that one thing. I have a whole nother webinar about ways to support sleep. So if you're really struggling with sleep, you might want to check that out. Here's a clip of my website, humannaturellc.com. I have all of my webinars recorded, so you can go back and watch them. This one will be recorded and posted too within the next week or two. And what I wanted to point out was this Sleep Naturally video that I produced in February. So you could go back and watch that or set up a time to meet with me one-on-one. One of the prominent spokespersons for circadian rhythm and health is Panda. And he has some great TED Talks available on YouTube. So if you're curious about the circadian rhythm and health, I encourage you to look him up. And basically, what he says from the research he's been involved in is that you want to avoid eating for 1 hour after waking up. You got to let your organs kind of wake up and be ready to receive nutrition. And he emphasizes the importance that they're finding that people eat within a window that's not too big. So basically, you don't want to be eating late at night or have a really long feeding window and a very short sleeping window. Um, and one of the studies he talks about in one of his talks is I found to be really impressive because they had different groups of people doing different things, but the people who they didn't change what they ate at all, right? Like maybe they were eating a lot of junk food and having to work night shifts, whatever. Those people still followed a healthy eating window where they avoided food overnight in the middle of the night, and they got better. They didn't change what they were eating at all. They just changed when they were eating. And all of that translated to a reduction in a lot of their problematic health symptoms. So it can be really powerful just change when you're eating. He encourages people to avoid food for 2 to 3 hours every night before bed, and also, of course, to dim the lights, trying to dim that artificial blue light before bed to help with the sleep cycle and the circadian rhythm of producing energy during the day. The next thing I want to talk about is really at the root of it is trying to control inflammation. If someone is inflamed, they're not going to have energy. And so many people, especially in America, but this is really a global problem now where there's just everybody has a refrigerator and there's access to food all the time. There's an overabundance of eating happening and there's an overabundance of carbohydrates. And as we age, as we lose muscle mass, as we're aging, as we have a more sedentary lifestyle, our tolerance for carbohydrates goes down. So people are all becoming more insulin resistant as we get older, unless you're doing something actively to work against that, like modifying your diet or working really hard on building muscle and being physically active. And so the end result of that is that you've got blood sugar swings, which are triggering a lot of chronic inflammation in the body. And that will show up as chronic skin problems, joint problems, diseases, hair, hormone problems, mood problems, digestive problems. Everything in the body is affected by a blood sugar problem and a blood sugar swing. So it's really important to start making some dietary choices to reduce the amount of carbs and sugars you're eating if they're excessive or they're just not working for you. There's individual diets for everyone. So I don't mean to say that this template needs to be on everybody, but I would just share from having worked with people in food for 17 years and having started as a vegetarian and changed my perspective over time that I do really like the paleo diet for a lot of people because it's got an emphasis on animal protein, which is very good at providing the key nutrients needed for the mitochondria, but also for balancing blood sugar. And that really helps keep inflammation down and people feel much more energetic. There's also an emphasis on good animal fats that has all of the important fat-soluble vitamins that are needed in the cells. Plenty of healthy vegetables, of course, is good, very good for the gut bacteria. And then for carbohydrates, I say, really it needs to be the right amount for the person. People with more muscle who have a healthier metabolism or are younger can tolerate more carbohydrates than those who aren't. So I would say through my whole career, I have seen people continuously change their diet and improve their energy. So that's definitely a therapeutic approach to explore if you're really struggling with energy and you're open to changing your diet. I actually wrote a book about this called The Body Tune-Up, and it was published last year. And you can get it on my website or at the library. But basically, it's a 6-week process of changing what you're eating to reduce inflammation and improve the function of the mitochondria in terms of killing off the unhealthy cells, improving energy production, improving blood sugar control, improving gut health, etc. So the other thing I want to talk about is exercise. Exercise helps with energy production because it basically boosts the number of mitochondria inside the cells. So that's cool. And then we get net energy from that. Exercise also boosts oxygen. So if you're getting more oxygen delivered, then your cells with the mitochondria can make more energy. Also, obviously, if you're exercising, you're improving your lung and your cardiovascular health, which in turn helps you feel like you can move and be healthier throughout the day. Exercise improves digestion, it's improving blood flow, it's improving absorption, and it also improves hormones that help you feel energetic. So here's an example of a research study where physical exercise is shown and explained to protect the mitochondrial health. So I just wanted to spend a minute talking about stress because I think it's important to recognize how someone's career or position or role in life can affect their overall health and the health of their mitochondria and thus their energy level too. So what I just for the sake of giving you kind of a comparison to think about, I took a famous woman on Wall Street and put her picture next to a famous female surfer. And so you can think about, what the lifestyle is typically like for someone who works on Wall Street, might have access to all the best health support, like great diet, but in front of a screen all the time, indoors, under a lot of stress, versus someone who maybe not be as well off financially, maybe not always have the best diet. I mean, certainly these elite professionals probably do pretty well, but if we picked an average surfer and compared it to an average person on Wall Street, chances are the surfer's not going to be eating as great of a diet, but they're outside, they're in the sun, they're in the water, they're getting heat and cold therapy, movement, exercise, all these things. So for our own lives, I think it helps sometimes to reflect on how we're spending our energy. Some people need a lot of physical support when they're under a lot of stress, and some people need a lot of mental support, like they need to really focus on their attitude and their drive, and that's what gets them through and helps them with their resilience. So, but it's important to have some sort of stress management approach no matter what you're doing. So in this last section of the talk, I want to talk about supplements that can help with energy. You probably recall that creatine is made into phosphagen in the first step of energy production, like, when we're doing a burst of energy that only takes 10 or 15 seconds. Creatine is a great supplement. I love creatine. It's probably the longest studied supplement ever. So it's very safe. We know a lot about it. For example, an average woman might take like 5 grams of a creatine powder daily if she's looking for improvement in her energy performance. So a lot of athletes or people doing strength training will get a benefit from creatine. But some recent research also shows that creatine is actually really good for older adults also. So not necessarily people that we think of as being in like the strength training athlete group, but the creatine that's stored in our body declines as we get older. And so creatine supplement can actually be used to help with mental focus and sleep and other things besides just that quick burst of energy when you're trying to lift something heavy or run for the bus. And it can just be added to water. So it's safe for most people. I know it's not safe for people with like kidney disease, for example, but otherwise in general, it's very safe. This is just a review where you can see pictured on the left where people would use creatine in a situation, where you're looking for more of that burst of energy and performance. Like you've got an athletic goal, or you've got maybe you've had traumatic brain injury, or you're an older adult and looking for a lot more support that way. There's so many different supplements that are helpful for the mitochondria. So honestly, we could have talked the whole hour just about energy supplements. So I'm sure some of you are taking supplements and I didn't mention them here, and that's not at all that those supplements aren't good. There's a lot of good supplements and herbs and different foods that help with energy. But this is the list that made the short list, just so that you don't have to listen to me go on and on. N-acetylcysteine is one of my favorites. It's NAC, and it is a precursor for making antioxidants, which help reduce the stress to the mitochondria. So if you're reducing stress, then the mitochondria are more productive, thus you have more energy. Ubiquinol is a form of CoQ10. Most of you have probably heard of CoQ10. It's a wonderful antioxidant in the body that also helps with making your metabolism more efficient and helping with energy. And I like ubiquinol because the problem with CoQ10 is that it's not very absorbable. And so in recent years, ubiquinol has become more prevalent on the market, and it seems like it translates into more benefits for most people. So when you've got to choose between the two, I would buy a ubiquinol over a CoQ10 supplement. There's a number of different B vitamins that basically help support the production of ATP and energy inside the cell. So B vitamins like a B complex or a B vitamin rich food like organ meat or egg yolks would be a great example of things that can help the mitochondria. Omega-3 fatty acids are also very important. And so to optimize this, you'd want to be eating fish or seafood daily, or taking like a high DHA, like 1,000 milligram DHA supplement daily if you're not eating fish. Magnesium is very important. I talk a lot about magnesium in my webinars on digestive health and sleep. And it also happens to be a key nutrient for producing energy in the mitochondria. And vitamin C and zinc as well. Vitamin C is found, of course, in fresh fruits and vegetables. And zinc is typically found in animal foods, especially seafood, soft-shelled seafood, and pumpkin seeds. Here's an example of a vitamin that's focused on mitochondrial health. So I just use this as an example. This is one I sell. You can look at it on my website. And just as an example of a multivitamin where you can get a lot of the key nutrients plus more in like a daily multivitamin. So you can check out the label here and kind of get an idea. You'll see that the NAC is on there and some other things like carnitine that can be helpful for energy production. Carnitine is also very high in meat. So if you're eating a fair amount of animal protein, you may not need to supplement with that. It's also got other great things in it, like the broccoli seed extract, which is an example of a powerful antioxidant. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things out there. I'm definitely a fan of adaptogen herbs and different herbs too that help with hormone balance, because hormone balance and blood sugar control translate to healthier energy production. The last thing I want to share is just to encourage you to get your basic blood chemistry evaluated by someone like myself. So I can do this in the private sessions at the co-op if people ask me to, but looking at basic labs like a comprehensive metabolic, a lipid panel, a CBC, a vitamin D, a full thyroid panel can be really helpful because for one, I look at this much differently than a medical doctor would. I'm trained in looking at what's called the functional ranges, which are the optimal ranges. And I do find over and over again that people who are chronically tired or have some other chronic health condition that they need help healing with, some of their physiological pillars that support healing and support mitochondrial health are not there. For example, they might not be oxygenating their cells. They might be low or just functionally low in iron or B12 or folate. They might be functionally low in vitamin D, even though they're medically normal. They might have some blood sugar problems, even though they're not diabetic. They might still experience a lot of blood sugar dysfunction, or they may have some subtle thyroid problem where their cells just aren't getting enough thyroid hormone. So there's a lot of other things beyond just these lifestyle things I wanted to emphasize in the talk today that can translate to how someone is feeling. And so really looking at the data for each person can be really powerful to help change the situation. So thank you so much for joining me